Ever thought about making a really big lifestyle change? Maybe moving into another house, downsizing, upsizing, moving onto a caravan, or even a narrowboat? Well, March will make 3 years that Peter will have been on the narrowboat as a continuous cruiser. I hope this video will help you make some decisions of your own. Or if nothing else, I hope you enjoy the journey that Peter has been on, and that it might prompt you to make some changes in your lifestyle. So without further ado, let's begin. March takes Peter into his 3rd year anniversary of being a continuous cruiser on the narrowboat. So this next series of videos is going to be finding out from him what the process was from his first idea of thinking, I think I might like to live on a narrowboat, to actually owning a boat. So Peter, can you talk us through your first concept of living on a narrowboat and the thought processes, the decisions, the choices that you had to make to get to where you are now as a continuous cruiser?
Yes. Well, we first went on a boat in the early 80s. We took a 2-week holiday, went around the Midlands with a group of people. There were 5 adults and 4 children and a dog. And our neighbours at the time told us they used to live on a boat. So I knew that you could do that. Then a bit later, I spent a spell abroad in Kuwait in the early part of 1992. I arrived just before Christmas, and then I came back in March 92. My flat was rented out, had tenants in it, so one of my thoughts was I could perhaps get a boat, put it on the Trenton Mersey, I think it would have been, and live on the boat and then leave the flat rented. But very quickly I realised that I also needed to find a job, and there was no way I had a telephone, and even mail was difficult. So time and technology wasn't right for living on a boat and working.
Right.
So I let the idea go. And then when I was working in The Hague, I was renting a flat there, and after a couple of years, when I was there settled, I did think about changing to a better flat. And another option I thought about was I looked up how much a new boat would cost.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, a brand new boat was about £70,000, a 70-foot boat.
What year was that?
2007, that would have been, possibly 2008. I can't be recall, but and I thought that it was probably there was a way of getting it across the North Sea,
right.
Not sailing it, of course. I now know that it would have been not too difficult. You just get the whole thing craned onto a cargo ship,
Mm-hmm.
and then dropped in the canal near the Hook of Holland. But because I was on a contract and it was a rolling 6-month contract, we never quite knew when it was going to end.
Right.
Then I didn't do it again then.
So that was the second thought that you had, I might live on a boat.
Yes.
The second time.
And then it would have been a lot more feasible because, of course, I had a mobile phone then.
Right. So technology was catching up with the process.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
The other thing that worried me about living on a boat was something which people still ask me about every time the subject of living on a boat comes up, which is, isn't it cold? Don't you get cold with sitting on the cold water in a steel boat? So once again, the opportunity went by. And then finally, I was working at a job I liked very much, and I was prepared to keep working until they threw me out. But then the company changed direction in a major way, and there was a very large change of personnel. They never told us, but I think there must have been 400 people plus around the world who were made redundant. And I thought about another project, and that ran into some bumps. And then someone said to me, "You know what? You haven't even considered the option of retiring. How about that?"
I wonder who that was.
And I said, "Well, the trouble is I'd need something to occupy me so I don't end up watching daytime television instead." I was doing voluntary work, but to my surprise, the idea of doing that much more of my time didn't appeal. I wanted something extra. So then you said immediately, "Oh, well, this is the website you want to look at if you're looking at buying a boat." So you'd obviously been looking yourself.
We actually had just been, in 2017, I think it was, on our first narrowboat holiday. Before we even set foot on a boat, the idea fired my imagination, and I was looking to see if there was any way I could buy a boat. Not that I had the money, but I still thought about it. I don't think I ever told you that, though, at the time.
No.
No, I didn't. So the idea of Peter going on a boat was quite interesting to me at the time. And so I encouraged it. Why not?
We made the decision to start looking seriously just before Christmas.
Yeah.
So
Christmas 2017, yes.
That's right, because then 2nd of January 2018 started seriously. We'd done a lot of reading of online articles and looked at boats for sale to see the sort of things that you could get.
Yes.
And there's a company called the Fit Out Pontoon. They won't know they're getting a plug because I've never actually spoken to them. But they publish a lot of really good articles about everything to do with boats, including how to buy a boat and how to move on to a boat.
Right.
They had a great memorable phrase about downsizing from a house to a boat. And they said, you have to get rid of a lot of things, have to think about what will fit on the boat and what won't. And then they came up with this line that there are 2 stages to downsizing onto a boat. The first stage is having less stuff, and the second stage is wanting less stuff. And I've really noticed that stage coming on, that I look at things and I think, I don't really need that, and I don't. And when I look at something, the first thing I think is, if I bought that, where would I stow it?
Very important when you're on a narrowboat.
Yeah, it's the old saying of a place for everything and everything in its place. And I know that if I don't know where its place is, I'll be forever tripping over it.
Or losing it.
Yeah. So we spent a lot of time reading articles about what size engine do you need, and in fact, I put it in my looking book. But first thing was the length, and the biggest boat you can have on the canals is actually 71 feet. But I thought 70 feet, that'll give it the most living space. Then I worried about whether I could actually handle a 70-foot boat and wouldn't keep getting stuck hitting things. Also, the license you pay is per foot, so it's the most expensive boat to have on the water. But we drew up a list, and
in the notebook.
In the notebook, and I wrote out the list each time I went to see boats, and then just marked against my list. So we've got the age of the boat. I didn't want one too old. The engine size, decided after talking to a lot of people that perhaps minimum would be 38 horsepower. So that would allow us to be able to go onto tidal waters and rivers.
Which we haven't done yet. Oh, yes, we did. We've been on the Thames.
We've done the Thames, yes.
Yeah, anyway, carry on. Sorry.
Yes. Also, I decided that I'd like to get a more modern boat because they have spray foam insulation, which is more solid than the some of them had polystyrene blocks, some of them have rock wool. Then wanted radiators as well as a stove, and a minimum of 450 ampere hours in the boat batteries, so we had plenty of power overnight. An inverter so that I could take the 12 volts in the batteries, convert it to 230 volts, because I'd realized that some things I was looking for you just can't get in 12 volt versions, including the television, which has turned out to be a completely irrelevant because
We
I
don't watch
just
TV.
don't watch it. Yes, so I was looking at the number of power outlets there are, both 12 volts and 230 volts. What kind of toilet? It always comes down to toilets on boats quite quickly, normally.
Toilet humour, there's plenty of it.
Yeah, so we did look at the exotic ones, which are less exotic now, like composting toilets, but basically it comes down to, do you want a tank which needs to be pumped out, or do you want a cassette system where you can just take the cassette out and empty it? And one of the big differences is emptying a cassette is free. It's included in your license. But pumping out a tank is around £15 a time. So that was a consideration, I have to say.
Yeah, it's an ongoing charge.
Yeah. I also now know that there are many more places you can empty a cassette than there are places where you can pump out.
Yes.
And there are practical considerations as well. If the boat breaks down or gets stuck in ice or anything like that, or you get stuck behind a broken lock, you can, or I can, put the cassette onto a little trolley I've got and walk a mile, even 2 miles, to empty it. But you can't get a 2 mile long hose to the pump out point.
And one of the other things that we've also done is put it in the car and driven it if we weren't able to walk there.
Yeah.
So that's another option that you have.
Yeah. And decided on the basic shape. I'd forgotten about that. The back end of the boat, most hire boats are what they call cruiser stern, so it's wide open. There's a lot of space for socializing, but you often can't do anything with it in the winter. You can get covers over them called pram hoods. So I did look at some cruiser stern boats with pram hoods, but I thought perhaps what we've got, which is a traditional stern, or possibly a semi-trad, which is slightly open at the back. But now I've got an enclosed engine room, which means I can lock my bicycle away out of sight.
Now, when it comes to the stern, I have to say that having had our hire boat with a cruiser stern, I was all up for that because I really enjoyed being out there when Peter was cruising the hire boat, and I really enjoyed it. So when he started talking about this really tiny traditional stern, I zipped it. It was his boat, and what he wanted went. But actually, I really enjoy it because it's quite cozy and it's not exposed to the elements so much. So if I'm out the back cruising with him, I can actually just step down and I'm enclosed and the wind doesn't get to me so much, and I do feel the cold. So good choice, Peter. Well done.
Yes, and the same at the other end. You have an open well deck, and I wanted a cratch, which is the wooden frame with a canvas cover and normally glass windows. And it's some people don't have them and say that they don't need it. I couldn't imagine being living on a boat that didn't have a cratch, because it's like having a conservatory. There's a great place to sit. It may not be as hot as inside the rest of the boat, but it's got lots of space. I mean, I put the cat litter tray out there, so that's nice.
Yeah.
And I can stow up to 150 kilos of coal out there without it being in the way. Plus, all kinds of other things, and you can take wellies off there as well.
We've also used it for having dinner outside and glasses of wine.
Oh yes, in the summer you rolled up the side screens.
Even in the winter,
Oh,
Christmas.
that's true.
Yeah, Christmas we spent having a meal out there, and New Year's and what have you.
Yeah.
But we're jumping the gun a bit. So your criteria.
And the only other one I had down here then was it's not on this list, but the layout of the bed and the bathroom.
Yes.
We didn't talk about that yet.
No, we haven't. No.
Yes. Holiday boats again tend to have a bathroom which has a door at either side which close, so that you can't walk down the length of the boat when the bathroom's in use. It gives you more space, but it is restricting. I heard actually just recently I was talking to my son, and I was talking about this, and he laughed and he said, yes, that hire boat that we went on back then when he was about 6,
Yeah.
that had a walk-through bathroom. I remember it well because we weren't allowed to walk along the gunnel on the outside, except when somebody was in the bathroom. So as soon as anyone went into the bathroom, all the children on board, well, I didn't notice this at the time, but they all rushed outside and came up with an excuse to go from one end of the boat to the other.
Oh, fantastic. That must have been quite a sight, seeing all these children scurrying around on the gunnel.
Yes, they loved it. We'd be cruising along and you'd see a lock, and so I'd shout down the hatch, "Lock!" And it was like putting a stick into an ant's nest, because at the far end of the boat there'd be this explosion of little figures all carrying windlasses, jumping off the boat, and the dog, and rushing down the towpath to get the lock ready.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So that's the bathroom. And what about the bed?
Yes. So the bed was, you can have a bed that's in line, goes down the length of the boat, but to be able to walk past it, the bed's normally no more than 4 feet wide. That was okay. The hire boat we had a bed that size, but thought for permanent use, maybe a bit more space. You can get beds that slide out another foot, and that's probably quite a good option. But the other option is a cross bed, which flips over and spreads out across the full width of the boat. And in the end, that's what we've ended up with.
And it works perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's very quick to put up and take down. And in fact, if I'm not moving the boat, I don't bother to fold it up.
Yeah.
So the only other technical thing was you can get a bow thruster, which is a tube through the bow with a fan in it, a propeller, which you can run in either direction and move the bow of the boat around. Well, I hope this is interesting you. It's not interesting him because I can hear him snoring. But yes, we had our list, and so I started viewing boats and comparing them to the list of criteria. And here's an example, actually from the 6th of January. It's one of the first we saw. Won't mention the name of the boat because I saw it just recently, and there's a couple living on it very happily. But
it just wasn't the right one for you.
Yeah, it was 57 feet long, so it was long enough. 2004, had the right sized engine, the same engine that I've got in this boat actually, and it had a bow thruster and stowed lots of batteries. But I went down and just noted everything that it did have, and then at the bottom I put a to do, which is if I bought this boat, what would I have to do to it to make it mine? And add a washing machine, because that was one thing we thought would be very useful.
Yeah.
Change the toilet because it was a portable, it wasn't plumbed in or fixed in.
It was a porta potty type thing.
Change the seating because although it had a dinette, it was L-shaped, so it was where we're sitting now, and it went round in an L, and you had to put the
posts in.
Put the table legs in, and it sat on those, and it just didn't feel right. And also, I said the paint would probably need repainting at some point. And I just carried on marking against that list of criteria as we went on. The bow thruster I took out as not, that wasn't a deal breaker. And then eventually we got to come to see this boat, and I was a bit briefer on this. I didn't write out the whole list, but I just put pluses, ticks all the feature boxes except the paintwork, which was looking a bit tired. It had a brand new stove because the old one had cracked.
Yeah.
And it had a nice dinette, good size. The minus I put down was, although it did have a cratch, I didn't like it. It was looking old. The wooden frame was looking old, but also the other thing I'd forgotten, the frame was an tight A like that,
Yeah.
which means when you stand inside, you've got limited headroom to walk around. And so within 6 months of buying the boat, we found someone who built the cratch we have now, and that has an A frame with a flat top. So instead of being 5 inches wide at the top, it's now 16 inches, and that makes a tremendous difference.
Yes.
And also one big pane of glass, which I could then paint on.
Yes.
So that's how we went about finding the boat. It was much easier once I had a list of criteria to measure against,
Yeah.
because you can go and look at a boat and get swayed by one particular feature.
And what was the criteria you mentioned to me about the timing of when you wanted to be on the boat?
Oh yes, well, because we started looking in January,
Yes.
and I thought it would be good to be on the boat before the end of spring, because I didn't want to step onto the boat right at the height of the best time of the year and then spend several months thinking, well, this is easy, and then having a terrible shock when winter came along.
Yeah, you wanted to experience the hard winter first, and if you could cope with that, you could certainly cope with the summer. I guess that was your
and
thinking.
also to find out quickly if there's anything I needed to do during the summer to prepare the boat for winter. And I got my wish, goodness didn't I? In fact, we had to wait a week to pick the boat up because there was ice in the marina where it was being kept. They said we couldn't get it out until the ice melted.
Right.
And I then had an overly ambitious trip down the Grand Union in almost constant rain, and it was very cold and very wet. And
More of that later. What was the time frame from thinking this time around I'm going to live on a narrowboat to the time you actually bought the boat? What was that time frame?
until I bought it, it was only about 2.5 months, so about 10 weeks.
It was quite a quick process, and that was from the first thought that you had, well, let me give this a go, to the time you bought the boat. It was 2.5 months.
Yes. Of course, as well as looking for a boat, I had to decide what to do with my flat. And I tried various things and eventually decided to rent it. And then I had to go into all the things about how do you prepare your place for renting. But one of them, a really useful exercise, is I called my financial advisor and we had a meeting, and I said, I'm going to go and live on a boat. You know, am I
As
mad?
you do.
And we spent an hour and a half going through. He was very thorough. Went through every detail. How much should the boat cost? Are boats appreciating or depreciating? How much is the license? How much does the fuel cost? How much fuel do you think you'll use? And all of that. And I do remember that about an hour in, he paused and he said, "This really stacks up, doesn't it?" He said, "It's a very economical lifestyle." And I said, "Yes, it's looking that way, but that's not the reason I'm doing it." But a lot of people do it because it's they can't think to buy a house if they're in the south of England, but they can buy a boat and live on it.
It's a good option. It's a good option.
Yeah, and also it became clear that you really don't have to make compromises these days. So I was able to sort out mobile broadband and mobile phones. I had full communications. And there's all kinds of extra things to realise, and because you've got that communication, I know what's going on the network because the CRT send out emails telling me that the swing bridge to the north of me is out of action for the foreseeable future
Ah,
at Winkwell.
just as well we can't cruise anyway because of a pandemic.
Yes, which is not surprising because twice I've been past that bridge when it has broken.
Right.
The first time they had to have a CRT man actually operating the bridge because it wasn't safe to operate for self-operation. And the second time I got there and I ended up spending the night opposite the Three Horseshoes pub.
Right.
That turned out to be a good bit of serendipity, that, because I met some really interesting people who ran a cafe that did music events, and I went to a music event about 10 days later, that was when I saw Declan Zapala.
Yes.
For goodness sake.
Can you hear Flann?
He's
Listen. Can you hear him? He's snoring away. He really is. Okay, so if you're thinking of making a lifestyle change, you can see that starting with a list of criteria that you would like for it is a good idea, starting with a framework. Whether it be onto a narrowboat or a caravan or even moving to another house, a list is pretty good idea, I think.
Yeah.
So we will draw this episode to an end. Peter's anniversary is in March, and there will be 2 further episodes at least to cover the last 3 years. So next week's episode, we will talk about how he made the interior of the boat his own, and the things that he brought onto the boat to make it his own. So design your ideal boat life if you can, and take heart from what Peter has done. Thank you to all my subscribers. Thank you for watching. If you would like to subscribe, like and share this video, I would really appreciate it. And until next week and next week's video, bye!